The Epstein Files, Part 12. What the Case Reveals: Power, Silence, and System Design. This final episode is not about Jeffrey Epstein. Not directly. It is about what his case reveals. About how power moves through systems. How silence is structured. And how accountability can be delayed without ever being denied, yet still fail to arrive. Because the most important question is not what happened. It is how it was allowed to continue. Across 12 episodes, we traced a pattern. Not a conspiracy. A structure. One that repeats across institutions, across decades, across different individuals. The Epstein case is not unique because of its facts. It is significant because of its architecture. At every stage, the same elements appear. Asymmetry of power. Fragmentation of responsibility. Normalization of warning signs. And a preference for containment over confrontation. These are not accidental features. They are design outcomes. Power does not operate through constant action. It operates through selective inaction. Through deciding which signals matter. Which voices are credible. Which risks are tolerable. In the Epstein case, warnings were not absent. They were abundant. What was absent was escalation. This is the first structural insight. Systems fail not because they do not receive information, but because they classify it. Complaints were received. Reports were filed. Concerns were raised. But they were isolated, localized, decontextualized. No single authority held the full picture, and no mechanism forced consolidation. The second insight is about legitimacy. Institutions rely on trust, but trust, once established, often replaces verification. Epstein's wealth, connections, and perceived respectability functioned as insulation. They did not prove innocence. They reduced scrutiny. This is not corruption in the cinematic sense. It is reputational gravity, where perceived credibility bends institutional behavior. The third insight is about law. Law is not only a system of rules. It is a system of discretion. Prosecutors choose charges. Agencies choose priorities. Courts choose thresholds. Every choice is legal. Not every choice is just. The 2008 plea deal did not break the law in isolation. It demonstrated how legality can be used to limit exposure. How agreements can close cases without answering questions. How procedure can substitute for truth. The fourth insight concerns victims. Systems claim neutrality. But neutrality in unequal environments produces unequal outcomes. Young, vulnerable individuals face institutions optimized for stability, not protection. Their burden is higher. Their credibility is conditional. Their access to process is limited. This is not malice. It is imbalance. And imbalance, left uncorrected, becomes policy. The fifth insight is about time. Time is not neutral. Delay benefits continuity. Attention fades. Memory fragments. Personnel changes. Records scatter. Time is one of the most effective tools of insulation. The Epstein case demonstrates how delay does not erase responsibility. It redistributes it, until no single actor appears accountable. When the case reopened in 2019, attention returned abruptly. But attention is not a substitute for process. Exposure is not resolution. Visibility is not accountability. Epstein's death in custody ended the possibility of trial. That fact matters. Not because it implies hidden truth, but because trials serve a public function. They test evidence. They establish record. They discipline narrative. Without trial, meaning disperses. Speculation grows. Confidence erodes. Trust declines. This is not an emotional outcome. It is structural. After Epstein's death, institutions responded predictably. Investigations acknowledged failure. Reports documented shortcomings. Reforms were suggested. Responsibility remained abstract. This is not unique. Large systems rarely assign blame internally. They diagnose. They adjust. They move on. So what remains? Documentation, memory, sustained attention. These are fragile forms of accountability, but they matter. The Epstein case has already altered legal education, prosecutorial ethics, victims' rights discourse, journalistic practice. It has become a reference point, a cautionary example, but reference points only matter if they inform future behavior. Otherwise, they become archives. The final insight is this: the Epstein case is not a failure of one institution. It is a failure of coordination, of shared responsibility, of escalation mechanisms, of courage at moments where silence was easier. This does not mean systems are irredeemable. It means they require friction, transparency, redundancy, independent oversight, and sustained public attention. Because power does not fear exposure. It fears persistence. This series does not claim to deliver closure. Closure is a personal concept. What it offers instead is clarity about how systems behave, about where they fail, and about what vigilance actually requires. The Epstein files are not just documents. They are lessons, written not in verdicts, but in absence. And the final responsibility does not rest with courts alone. It rests with institutions, with media, with policymakers, and with the public. Because systems only change when attention does not move on. This concludes the Epstein files, not as an ending, but as a record.